Welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. It's mid-season review time, and today we're looking at the Adelaide Crows. As with all of these mid-season review episodes, we'll have a look at their season so far. We'll have a wrap-up of how their players are going. Look at what they've still got to come this year and what we expect for the rest of the 2024 AFL season for the Adelaide Crows. Also, as always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. These mid-season reviews only come out on YouTube, so check them all out. This is like team number 13, I believe. All 18 teams will have been released by the end of this week, so check them all out. Plenty of content on all of those. Also, don't forget to check out the social medias. There's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Check them all out. At All Aussie Rules for all of them. Plenty of content. Go check it all out. Before we jump into it, a reminder of everything that's coming up on the, video front this week. We've already released a round 14 review episode that came out on Monday on Spotify and YouTube. This is the Adelaide mid-season review. Later on today, the Collingwood one will go live. On Wednesday, we're going to have the Hawthorn and Richmond episodes go live on the YouTube channel right here. Thursday will be St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs. That will round out all 18 teams' mid-season reviews. And then on Friday, back to the regular podcast episode, which is the round 15 preview episode, out on Spotify and YouTube Friday morning. So be prepared for all that. Go check it all out. It's all going to be very good content, in my opinion. Jumping in to the Adelaide Crows and their season so far, we do first off we do a little wrap up of each game, and then we'll move into the rest of it. Adelaide's season, as you can see, there's lots of red, so it has not been a great season for them, really. Started poorly, has finished going into the break poorly. Through the middle phase, they certainly looked a lot better. That from round 5 through round 11 was really good, but the bookends were not great, have not been great for them. So first off, they went up to the Gold Coast. It was a slippery day out there. It was, I believe, Saturday night game, and it just never looked like winning. They ended up only losing by 6, but they did trail by a fair margin for a fair chunk of this game, especially early and right through until the last quarter. They kicked themselves back into it in the last quarter, but they did trail by 29 points at three-quarter time, so they came back quite considerably in that last quarter. Round 2, they hosted Geelong. This was Friday night footy. Again, just a kind of nothing performance from them. They were down by 19 points at quarter time, and then they came back a little bit at times, but overall it just kind of stayed about that margin, and they ended up losing by 19 points. So they kicked themselves out of it in that first quarter, just never fought their way back into the game. Round 3 was Fremantle over in the West. Fremantle over in the West was always going to be a tough challenge for them. And it ended up being that way. They kicked 4 goals 10 for the day, so very poor in front of goals. Got to 34 for the match, which, not surprisingly, is their lowest score of the season. The crazy thing about this, they were on 17 at quarter time, so after quarter time they only managed to double their score up to 34. A really poor performance, really. Only managed 11 points in the second half. Ended up losing by 35, and not their best performance, it must be said. Round 4 was Gather Round. They hosted Melbourne. This was the second week in a row in Melbourne played in Adelaide. They played Port Adelaide the week before and beat them. They stayed through until the Thursday and managed to beat the Crows as well. Big 2 weeks from Melbourne, and wrapped up a very poor first 4 weeks for the Crows. They went down by 15 points. Again, poor kicking in front of goal. This week it was 8 goals 15. So across the 2 weeks they kicked 12 goals 27, which just isn't going to win you many games of football, let's be honest. Not the worst performance of all time, but again, home game lost by 15 points. Going into this season, they would have been hopeful of certainly making finals, and they'd pretty much blown them that opportunity 4 weeks in. 4 losses to start the season, 2 of those at Adelaide Oval. Poor kicking, just disappointing start to their year, really. Round 5, they travelled down to Melbourne, played against Carlton at Marvel Stadium, and all of a sudden, they played a good game. Sorry that my camera's glitching there. Don't know what's going on with that. But, yeah, they just went to Marvel Stadium and won. They kicked incredibly accurately, so did the reverse of what they had done the previous 2 weeks. They kicked 16 goals for 100. They won it only by 2 points in an absolute thriller, but a great performance there. They then hosted Adelaide. They didn't host Adelaide. They are Adelaide. Hosted Essendon at the Adelaide Oval. Kind of got lucky that Essendon kicked poorly. They stayed in it. Arguably should have had a set shot after the siren to win it. A free kick wasn't paid though, and they go down by 3 points in a game where Essendon kicked inaccurately and kept Adelaide in it. But overall, close game, just went down. Round 7, they went down to Hobart, played North Melbourne. Clearly, they started to show something in this one. North Melbourne, obviously, at this point, hadn't won a game until much later in the season. North Melbourne hadn't won a game, so they kicked a high score. They got 20 goals, made it to 138. Never looked in doubt of winning this one. They were 3 goals up at quarter time, extended it out to 6 goals by half time, and then 10 goals at 3/4 time. So, comfortable victory for Adelaide in round 7. Round 8 was the showdown. Port Adelaide, big game, and they showed up. They kicked straight again this week, so kind of a trend. When they were kicking straight, their results kind of looked all right, as was shown here. They got a big win. Port Adelaide kicked pretty poorly this day, whereas Adelaide didn't. 12-6. Led pretty much start to finish and got the win. Round 9 was Brisbane at Adelaide Oval. This was on a Sunday evening game, and it was close all the way through and ended up being as close as it can get. It was a draw. This was the second draw of the season. And what's that, like 3 close games by this point, and I've had another couple since then, so they've had a little bit of unluckiness, I guess. They certainly could have won a couple other games, close games, and their season would still be at least alive. But they came out of the draw with Brisbane and went to play Collingwood in Melbourne. My words are totally working great today. And another game where, in another world, they win this. Collingwood kind of looked like they were in control without dominating. They were down by, 17 points at 3/4 time, Adelaide. Came home well, but just couldn't quite get over the line, lost by 4 points. And then they went back home the following week for West Coast, and this was clearly their best overall performance, 4/4 performance. Obviously the best win of their season. Could go to either the Carlton match or the Port Adelaide one, but this was just a dominant display from start to finish. They kicked 46-2 in the first quarter. Kind of didn't push all the way through, I don't think, but ended up winning by 99 points in dominant fashion over the Eagles. So at this point, even though they'd started 0-4, their 7-week period post that looked really good. 4 wins, a draw, and 2 losses, and both losses by under a kick. So, in a world, alternate universe, they could quite easily have won all 7 of those games, and all of a sudden they would have been 7-4, which would have had them in the 8 and potentially a chance to really push towards the second half of the season. But instead, they're only 4 wins, 6 losses, and a draw. And things aren't quite so good. And then it's kind of got worse since then. If we look at what has happened over the preceding weeks, Hawthorn down in Melbourne at the MCG, they lost by 27 points here. Hawthorn obviously have turned their season around. They certainly have been playing a lot better football over the last 7 or 8 weeks, but still a disappointing result. They kind of got blown away in the first quarter. Second quarter they still lost. Third quarter they lost as well, so they were down by 33 points at three-quarter time. Never really looked a chance of winning this one, and ended up losing by 27. Then in what is, I think, quite clearly, in my opinion, their worst loss of the year, at home against Richmond, Thursday night footy, and they go down by 8 points. Just got dominated, really. Like, not in actual gameplay, just in ability to put score on the board against a Richmond team that has certainly not been setting the world on fire this year. Granted, they're getting players back, Richmond, by this point, but still, a very disappointing loss, this one that they certainly wouldn't have been expecting to lose. And then round 14, they went up against the top of the ladder, Sydney, who are miles ahead of everyone at the moment, and kind of got shown why they're so far off the pace. They only lost by 42 points, but it could have been a lot more if Sydney had turned up in the first quarter. Adelaide were leading in the third quarter and then just got blown away, but the only reason they really were leading was just their ability to convert and kick straight, really, because otherwise they were dominated around the ground, they were dominated out of the centre, they were dominated in pretty much every facet of the stat categories, but they were holding in on the scoreboard, and then in the end, through Joel Amartey kicking 9 goals and dominant displays from Grundy, Heaney, Goulden, Sydney took over and flew away with the win. So it puts Adelaide in a really average spot, let's be honest, for the season. They're sitting way down in 15th at the moment. And I think it's almost impossible to see them making finals from here. It's physically possible, but I don't see it happening. The way I kind of see the season at the moment is Sydney's pretty much certain to finish, definitely finals, but almost certain to finish top. There's then a fight between second through to, I would say, 13th, have a realistic chance of making finals, and then there's the bottom 5 teams that I think are pretty much eliminated. So St Kilda, Adelaide, West Coast, Richmond and North Melbourne. I just can't see happening. Their percentage is really good. They've had a couple big wins. They've had a lot of close losses. Obviously, Essendon, Collingwood, Richmond, and Gold Coast, all under 10 points. So their season could be a lot different, but in the end, it's not. So that's where they're at. We'll have a look at some of the stats for the Adelaide Crows. Quarter by quarter, they're pretty consistent most of the way. They finish the games best. Final quarters, they've won 9, lost 4 and a draw, for a total of plus 3.36 per quarter. So that's their best quarter. Their first quarters are okay at 6 and 8. Third quarters, premiership quarters, they really struggle at. They're minus 1.86 points per quarter and 5 and 9 for the season. So it's interesting that their third quarters are bad and their fourth quarters are good, but that's just kind of how it's gone for them, really. A couple of those fourth quarters, like the Gold Coast one, is once the game's over, they've kind of dominated the last quarter. Wasn't officially over. They got within 6 points in the end, but they certainly flew home that day. They play a very high disposal game. Not that there's anything hugely wrong with that. It's just, as we'll look at when I get through some of the other stats, it's just maybe not the best, I guess, in terms of the not going. They struggle to push the ball when they need to. that's an issue with them. I think inside 50 count, they started the season really well, even when they were losing some of these early games. But it's kind of dropped off, especially the last month. The last 3 weeks in particular have been really bad. They lost it by 22 against Hawthorn, by 6 to Richmond, and then 26 to Sydney. So that's 2 dominations and 1 loss to a team that doesn't win inside 50s very often in Richmond. So a really bad 3-week stretch in that regard. Playing with the uncontested football that they do, they are the number 3 team ranked in disposal efficiency. They are very good at it, but I think that comes down to the fact that they play a lot of uncontested footy. They kick it around to uncontested marks, and it's kind of how they play, but they have had higher disposal efficiency than their opponents for the last 9 weeks. Their forward efficiency is very hit and miss. 1 week will be really good, the next it will be pretty average. The defensive efficiency, first 4 weeks was quite average. They were conceding too many goals, or too many shots at least, from inside 50s. Since then it's been rather consistent across the board. So I think their defence has certainly picked up after the first 4 weeks, in my opinion. Clearances, they kind of lose them regularly. Overall, they are -3 per game, -1 centre clearance and -2 in stoppage clearances per game. The last 3 weeks, they've absolutely been smacked in that category as well. So their last 3 weeks have been a really, really bad run of stats, I guess, really against kind of what they'd been showing. But that's how it is. Contested footy, they've only won at 5 out of 14 rounds, so not a huge amount. When uncontested footy, they've won 9 out of 14, so the exact opposite. For a team that gets so much of the ball, they don't win the contested footy so much. Maybe an area they need to look at, I don't know. Turnover game has really picked up. Even the last few weeks has still been pretty good. Their first 6 games, so rounds 1 through 6, up until the Essendon game, they'd lost the turnover count all 6 of those weeks by an average of 5.8 per game, and obviously their win-loss record at that point was 1-5, so not great. Since then, they've won the turnover count 6-2 for an average of 2.8 turnovers in the positive. And in that time, they've gone 3-4 and a draw. 3 wins, 4 losses and a draw. And certainly played a lot better footy, especially through rounds 7 through 11. Not so much the last 3 weeks. They play a very high mark, especially the last month. I think this is kind of where the last 3 weeks has gone so wrong, is the amount of uncontested marks they're taking just suggests that they're not making the ground and putting the pressure on the opposition that maybe they need to. I think that's an area that they need to look at, because at the moment it's just it's clearly not working. They've lost. You can forgive the Sydney one, but certainly the Richmond one is a very disappointing result, and one that shouldn't have happened. Hawthorn, you could argue as well that they should have done better in that one. The tackle game, kind of similar to the turnover game, and you can probably link them a little bit, because when you're tackling better, you're putting more pressure on the opposition and causing more turnovers. But the first 6 weeks, they went 1-5 in the tackle count for an average of -10. And then since then, they've gone 5 wins, 2 losses and a draw in the tackle count for an average of +3.8. So massive discrepancy from their first 6 games. They've really turned their season around in that regard, and had been looking good if you hadn't have seen their last 3 weeks. If they had have won 2 of those, the Hawthorn and Richmond ones, for example, they'd be in contention of finals. They certainly wouldn't be locked in the final race, but they'd have them at 26 points for the season. Similar spot to where Brisbane kind of is. Still need a lot of work to make finals, but certainly momentum would have been on their side and would have been looking a lot better going into the rest of the year. We'll now have a look at some of their players, how their different players are tracking. So mainly their midfielders are probably their most well-known and big-name players, I guess. Jordan Dawson had a slow start to the year, the first few weeks, but he really got going, especially through probably round 4 onwards, but round 5, 6, 7, 8, he was huge. He's probably slightly down on his form from last year overall, but his best is still the best in their team. Matt Crouch has been really good. He's averaging 30 touches a game and been really good. Rory Laird's getting a lot of it. I think Isaac Rankin arguably is their best player. Depends what you're looking at. A lot of commentators have put him already at the top. He's averaging 18.5 disposals a game and 2 goals. So really good numbers from him. They've got plenty of other good players on their team. They just lack a little bit of consistency. I don't understand the decision to drop Riley O'Brien. I think he's one of the best ruckmen in the league. He got dropped after the Hawthorn game, and they've been dominated in hit-outs the last 2 weeks. It can't be on form, I don't think. I thought he was pretty solid against Hawthorn, so I was very surprised, to say the least, about that. Looking at some other areas of, I guess, who's playing well and who's not. I don't know. I don't think anyone's playing terrible for them, or certainly not any of their big name players. It's just, I think, a matter of consistency for them. Some of their players, especially their midfielders, are really good on their good days. I think the biggest improver for them has been Jake Saligo. He's been really, really good. He's averaging 10 contested possessions a game, which is really solid. It's third highest for their team. Matt Crouch and Rory Laird are both above him, but he's really good in the contest. He's good at tackling, he's good at clearances, and I think has potential to be really good going forward. Speaking of in the clearance game, Matt Crouch is their best at centre clearances. He gets 2.7 a game, which is really good. Rankin is really good for the limited opportunities he kind of had in the middle. It's kind of picked up a little bit before his injury, but certainly hasn't been the highest. Stoppage clearances, Matt Crouch and Rory Laird both at the top of the table for their team. I think this is probably Jordan Dawson's biggest weakness, is his ability to get clearances as a centre mid. Probably would like to see him get a little bit better than that in terms of, I think he only gets 3 clearances a game, which is a bit lower than what maybe you'd expect from someone of his talents. Looking at Riley O'Brien, his numbers are pretty good. Like, obviously his hit-outs to advantage are really good. His hit-out to win percentage is really, really high, one of the best in the league. So I am surprised, I'm not going to lie, that he got dropped. Taylor Walker up forward perhaps hasn't been as good of a target as he was last year. Last year he was really good up there, but he's averaging 2.6 marks inside 50 per game, which is above average, but certainly not as elite as he was last year, where he almost won the Coleman. He's only averaging 1.5 goals a game. Fogarty's 1.6. Rankin's their leading goal kicker in goals per game, which is no real surprise, except for the fact that he's played a fair bit of midfield time, certainly of late. But yeah, the rest of the team's all well down on what you'd hope to be getting. In terms of score involvements, no one's great on their team. They're all pretty low. Jordan Dawson at score launches is an elite level for midfielders. So he does do that mainly through the turnover game. He has a very high intercept record for a midfielder, and turning those into scores he's very good at, compared to most midfielders at least. So yeah, that's a look at the Adelaide players. We didn't touch on any of their defenders, which perhaps we should have. I don't know. They get a fair bit of touches, like high possession games, a lot of their defenders, mainly due to this kicking to each other bizzo. But I don't know. Maybe they're not as. I guess that's certainly not the worst defensive team in the league. They don't concede that many points too often, so they obviously do their job pretty well. I don't know who the best of those is. Probably Jordan Butts in terms of actual win percentage in one-on-ones, but Hinge is really good down there. Brodie Smith gets a bit of it. Luke Nankervis is showing some okay signs, but they certainly have a bit of work to do, in my opinion. We'll have a look now quickly at what they have coming up for the rest of the season. So out of the bye, round 16, they host the GWS Giants. Certainly won't be an easy game. We'll see how the Giants are going by then. Obviously, they won on the weekend. We'll see how they go this week, and then they'll have Adelaide in Adelaide. Certainly wouldn't expect it to be an easy game. They then go up to the Gabba and play Brisbane. Obviously, they drew with them earlier this year. That certainly won't be a walk in the park. Round 18 against St Kilda. They'll be hoping to win this one, but based on what we've seen, I wouldn't be confident with either team. Round 19 is going to be a really tough one at Marvel Stadium against Essendon. Round 20, they host Hawthorn at Adelaide Oval. I guess try and get some revenge on losing to them a month ago. Round 21, they play Geelong down at the Cattery, so that will be a tough assignment. Round 22, they host the Doggies, who will, you'd imagine, would still be in finals contention at this point and probably really trying to cement themselves in the top 8, so they'll have a lot to play for that day, as will Port Adelaide in round 23 in the showdown. And then round 24, they finish off against the number 1 team in Sydney, who they just played in Adelaide Oval and lost. So playing them at the SCG to finish the year is not an easy assignment, and you'd imagine they're probably going to be mentally checked out by that point. What do we see them doing? I think the next month's going to be pretty tough, to be honest. St Kilda's their best chance to get a win. Even that's going to be tough. They have a really, really difficult run home when you look at it. They only play 3 teams that currently aren't in the 8, one of them being the Bulldogs, who arguably could be in the 8. 4 teams, sorry. But Brisbane won't be easy, and the other 2, St Kilda, Hawthorn. Hawthorn are in great form at the moment, so if they continue that, that'll be a tough game. And St Kilda, I don't know what that game will be. It will probably be a pretty boring one to watch, in my opinion. It will likely be a low-scoring affair. So yeah, pretty tough run home. They obviously play number 1 Sydney away. They play number 4 Essendon away. They play GWS, who are ranked 5. Geelong number 6 away, and then 7th and 9th in Port Adelaide and the Bulldogs. So tough run home. I can only see them maybe winning 2, to be honest. Maybe 3. It's going to be a rough end to their year based on what I've seen this year. I had high hopes for the Crows this year, and they've kind of just let me down. I had them finishing in the 8. I had them finishing above Port Adelaide, and at the moment it certainly looks like they're going to struggle to finish above 14th. I would imagine they finish 14th or 15th would be where I would have them probably. I think they're better than St Kilda, but whether they get above them or not, I don't know at the moment. So yeah, that's everything to do with Adelaide Crows so far this year. Not their best season, that's for sure. It's been tough for them because the last few seasons they had been going up in wins each year. They'd been looking better and better, but this year they just haven't really put it together. They've arguably been a little bit unlucky with some results, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and they're just not there at the moment. So they'll limp their way to the end of the season, I guess, and hopefully for their sake recoup and maybe look at what they can do to improve for next year. As always, though, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of Adelaide's season. Am I a bit harsh on them? I don't know. But let me know either way. I appreciate you for tuning in. Don't forget to check out all the other mid-season reviews and the regular podcast episode that goes out 2 times a week, Mondays and Fridays. Once again, thanks, and I'll catch you on the next one.